In the beginning, we saw the main character of this movie. Her name was Jennifer Hills. She was a novelist. In the beginning, she went to meet a broker. She rented a quiet and peaceful cottage from him to write her novel. She got the map from him and went on the road to get there. The place was so empty where she was about to go. In the next scene, we saw her stopping at a gas station. She was refueling her car. We also saw a strange man in the station. His intention does not look so good. He thought that Jennifer was lost, and that's why he talked to her about her destination. After that, Jennifer went to her rented cottage. She went inside the cottage and furnished it very well. She took out all of the writing stuff from her bag. In another scene, we saw Jennifer using a laptop. Along with that, she was talking to someone over the phone. But suddenly, she heard a noise from the cottage in front of her. So she put down her laptop and went there to check. But she saw that no one was there, and that's why she came back. In the next scene, we saw that Jennifer was drinking wine, and by mistake, she spilled it on her body. Therefore, she took off her shirt and went to the kitchen to wash it. But then we saw that someone was recording her. The next morning, we saw that Jennifer was jogging. While jogging, she found an abandoned house. She went inside the house and saw a broken bed and some mechanical tools. After that, Jennifer came back and tried to use the sink to wash her face. But there was no clean water in the sink. She was about to call someone, but her phone fell on the toilet and broke. So Jennifer called a plumber who lives nearby. His name was Matthew. When Matthew fixed the sink, Jennifer kissed him, and after that, Matthew left her house. In the next scene, we saw those 3 people who were in the gas station as well. Their names were Johnny, Andy, and Stanley. They were talking to each other, and Stanley had a camera in his hand. Yesterday, we saw that someone was recording Jennifer, and they were these 3 guys. Suddenly, Matthew came there and told them that Jennifer had kissed him, and we realized that he had no good intentions for Jennifer, and they want to use her since she lives alone. They were watching that video of Jennifer washing her clothes. At night, we saw that the main door of the cottage in front of her was making noise, and that's why Jennifer went to close it. With this chance, those 4 guys got inside her house. When Jennifer came back to her house, they were standing in front of her door. Stanley was recording her in the same way. After that, we saw that they made her feel so uncomfortable. Johnny forced her to drink wine and tried to break her front tooth, but he didn't do it. Jennifer was feeling so helpless since none of them was showing any mercy to her. After that, Johnny pointed the gun at Jennifer's mouth and forced her to suck it. And we realized what his actual intention was. Stanley kept recording it from the beginning. In the next scene, we saw that somehow Jennifer ran away from the cottage. She was running through the woods, and suddenly, she hit a man. His name was McDillon. He was a police officer. Jennifer told him everything, and the police took her to the cottage so that he could inspect the incident. After he went inside the house, he called someone to come here. To know the truth behind this incident, he needs to check her body. After that, the police officer touched her body, and she was feeling so uncomfortable. And then those 4 guys came there, and we realized that the police officer was with them. In the next scene, Matthew raped Jennifer, and then they let her go. We saw that Jennifer was walking through the woods without any clothes on her body. But then all of them came there once again. Johnny put her head under the water so many times and tortured her. After that, we saw that all of them raped her, except for Matthew, since he raped her last time. Jennifer jumped in the river in front of them, and they thought that she had died, so they burned down all the evidence. In the next scene, we saw that the police officer came back to his house, and in his house there was his wife and his daughter. His wife was pregnant. The police officer was a good guy in his family's eyes. Some days have passed after the incident, and those 4 guys doubted that Jennifer was still alive, because they could not find the dead body of Jennifer in the river. In the next scene, we saw Matthew. He was looking so depressed, and he always thinks that Jennifer was after him. And then we saw that someone just took him from there. In the next scene, we saw that Stanley ran to Johnny and told him that he hadn't deleted the video of raping her, and now they cannot find the camera. Johnny got so mad at him after hearing this. After that, we saw the scene of Johnny's house. Someone had put a dead bird and a sandal in front of his house. Johnny was so worried after seeing this. In the next scene, we saw that someone had sent the tape of the rape of Jennifer to the police officer's house, and the tape was in his wife's hand. Somehow he took it from her and went to those 4 guys, and he was so angry at them. He put that tape into Stanley's mouth. Until now, we thought that Jennifer was the one behind all of this, but they had doubts about Matthew as well, since he looked so depressed from the beginning. After that, they looked for Matthew, but they could not find him anywhere. Meanwhile, the police killed that broker as well, because he was the only one who knew that Jennifer went to that cottage. In the next scene, we saw Jennifer and Matthew. Jennifer was killing him by wrapping his neck with rope. Jennifer's body was full of hate for them. She wanted to kill them in a very painful way. After that, we saw Stanley and Andy. They were looking for Matthew. They heard a song and they followed it. While they were following the song, Stanley's leg fell into a trap, and he saw that Jennifer was standing in front of him. Stanley was feeling so much pain, and he called Andy for help. When Andy came there, Jennifer hit him with a baseball bat, and he fainted. After that, she also hit Stanley on his head, and he fainted as well. And after that, she took Andy to the abandoned house in the woods. When he woke up, he discovered himself in a bathtub, and he was tied down. And suddenly, the bathtub was getting filled with water. On the other hand, we saw Stanley. Jennifer had tied him to a tree, and she was recording him just the way that he did. So we realized that Jennifer was taking her revenge on them. Jennifer put a dead rat into his mouth and tied his eyelids to the tree as well. After that, she put some fish on his body so that the crows can eat them and his body. In the next scene, Jennifer went to Andy. He was above the bathtub filled with water. He requested Jennifer to let him go, but Jennifer told him that I've also asked you to let me go, but you guys didn't show me any mercy, and therefore she will not show any mercy towards them. Then Jennifer put some acid powder into the bathtub and took away one piece of wood so that he would lose his balance. When he lost his balance, his face got into the water, and he felt like his face was burning from acid. On the other hand, the crows had destroyed the face of Stanley. And just like that, Stanley and Andy died from torture. After that, we saw that Jennifer went to the gas station, and she was well dressed. Johnny came to her, and she hit him in the head. Johnny fainted. After that, we saw him tied down, and he had no clothes on his body. Jennifer asked him to open his mouth, just like he told her earlier. She pulled out all of his teeth with pliers. After that, she cut off his dick and put it in his mouth. Johnny died with this pain. In the next scene, we saw Jennifer in the police officer's house. She came here as the teacher of his daughter, and she talked to him over the phone. The police officer came home, but till then, Jennifer had left with his daughter. The police officer was looking for her, and he went inside his car, but then we saw that Jennifer hit him from the back, and he fainted. When he woke up, he discovered himself tied on a bench. The gun was pointed towards his asshole. After that, Jennifer brought Matthew to that place. Then Jennifer tied a rope to the trigger of the gun, and she tied the other end of the rope to Matthew's hand, so that whenever Matthew wakes up, he will move his hand, and therefore the trigger will be pulled by the rope, and the bullet will hit the police officer and Matthew as well. After that, Jennifer came outside, and we heard the sound of gunfire. This means the bullet had hit Matthew and the police officer, and they died from it.